Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where we're pleased to have on the show Judge John Michael Guidry. He's a First Circuit Court of Appeal judge. And Judge Guidry is going to talk to us about being a legislator, both in the House and the Senate, also being a judge on the First Circuit Court of Appeal for 16 years. But he's also going to talk to us about crime and how his own personal life experience and how important education was in his climb from being a young kid in a broken family in South Baton Rouge to being First Circuit Court of Appeal judge. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Judge John Michael Guidry. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, Sean Fagan, and Corey Ogeron, and our entire staff for letting us come into your homes for the last 10 years via Legal Lines. We hope that you've come to a greater understanding of how the law works and how the government works for you. So from all of us, thank you. Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show today Judge John Michael Guidry. He's a judge on the First Circuit Court of Appeal. Judge,
it's good to
thank you so much for doing the show with us.
It's good to be here. Yeah.
Well, let's just kind of dive in and kind of explain to folks your background, educational, family, all that, just so they have a kind of perspective of who you are.
Okay.
Give us your educational background.
Okay, I'm a graduate, a proud 1980 graduate of McKinley High School.
79 Lehigh.
Okay, great, right, not too far away. And then 1983 graduate of LSU in political science, and then a 1987 graduate of Southern University's Law Center.
And I saw cum laude.
Cum laude graduate.
That's good.
Thank you, Lordy. For cum laude.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then after that education, you started employment doing what?
I worked for a good period of time as a legislative assistant to the Honorable Joseph A. Delpit, who was a state representative, and ultimately he was the Speaker Pro Tempore of the Louisiana House of Representatives, and then at that point I served as assistant clerk of the House of Representatives.
And Speaker Pro Tem is a very powerful position.
Very powerful position. And after that, I graduated from law school in 1987, and then in January of 1988 I went to work as an assistant parish attorney for the city of Baton Rouge and the parish of East Baton Rouge, basically defending the city parish in third-party lawsuits, defending them with regard to nuisance ordinances, defending them with regard to personal injury lawsuits,
contract
disputes, police officer 1983 types of cases, a little bit of everything. And also had a private practice. From that point, I was elected to the Louisiana House of Representatives in 1991. Began my service in January of 1992.
Now, how old were you at that point, Judge?
I was early in my 20s, and
wow.
At that time,
did I read that you were one of the youngest legislators ever?
One of the youngest members of the House of Representatives.
Fantastic. Now, were you married at that point?
Right, got married in 1988, still married to the same beautiful woman, and I have two children
Carol,
now.
Is that right?
Carol Fowler Guidry, and I have two children, John Morgan Guidry, who's now 17, and Kennedy Michelle Guidry, who's now 10 years old.
Wonderful. Yeah. I actually named my daughter Madison because they were kind of male, feminine, you know, you didn't know. It might help out, I figured.
Yeah, yeah.
So after being in the House for 1 term?
I served 1 year in the House of Representatives and moved over to the Louisiana State Senate, where I served 5 years. And from there I was elected to the First Circuit Court of Appeal, and this is my 16th year on the Court of Appeal.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it has been.
Now, did I also read that you, during that period of time of public service, before being in the judiciary, that you served on Ports Commission and Airport?
Right, I served on the Greater Baton Rouge Port Commission, also served on the Greater Baton Rouge Airport Commission.
And what was the nature of that service? So I guess you're analyzing...
We were basically the policy makers for both of those entities. We basically were appointed on the Port Commission, appointed by the governor, on the Airport Commission, appointed by virtue of the election to the Senate. And so served in both of those capacities. Basically the governing body, policy making decisions, saw a great deal of growth in both of those entities, and the Greater Baton Rouge Port Commission and the Airport Commission during our tenure. Both of those are economic engines for the parish and for the region.
It's a big deal for the state and the U.S.
Yes, they are, and so we were pleased to have had that opportunity to serve there.
Yeah, that's a very, very influential and consequential position. The port. It's amazing how much commerce just from the whole United States of America goes through the Port of Baton Rouge.
Exactly,
Amazing.
exactly.
So you've been on the legislative side, and you've been on the judicial side of the coin, so to speak. And folks who've watched the show know that our power in our government is chopped up between the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So you've been on two sides. You've held two of the three types of positions you can hold in government.
Right, and I actually, as a assistant parish attorney, worked directly on the executive side for the mayor's office. We advise the mayor's office out of the parish attorney's office. So,
and actually, the port
right, that
assignment
was an
too by the
branch.
governor, right?
Right, it was the executive branch agency.
Interesting. So really, all three. Fascinating. Let's talk about the fact that you've also taught for many years now.
Right, I graduated in 1987 from law school. In 1988, I started teaching at the law school, began teaching legal writing, and currently I'm teaching appellate advocacy. It's a way to give back and to deposit some of the education and training that I've received in the lives of these future lawyers and future judges. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do in my public service, is to give back to young people. So teaching is a wonderful opportunity to make sure that when you have passed off the scene, you have sown into the lives of those who will come behind you and given back some of that experience and work ethic to the future generations.
And I think I also read that you are currently associated with a prestigious position or program, the Nelson Mandela program.
Nelson Mandela School of Public Policy at Southern University, Baton Rouge. It's political science is the area in which I've taught. I've taught introduction to law, I've taught constitutional law, taught American government. Again, an opportunity to give back to these young people who are preparing for a life of public service, giving them some of my practical experience, not only what I teach them out the book, but telling them what I've learned as a practical matter.
You've been on the front lines.
Yeah, and so that's, I think that's always beneficial for a teacher to have had some practical experience in the things that they're teaching. And so as a person who has been a judge, who has been a parish attorney, a person who has been in the legislature to teach a student American government, it gives you a little credibility with them, that you sort of know a little bit of what you're talking
That's
about.
Right. And also, I know numerous awards, but also including the Hall of Fame
that was very important to me. Southern University's Law Center has made a difference in my life. I wouldn't be a judge had I not come through the Law Center, and to be awarded that prestigious award by the Law Center meant a great deal.
In fact, we've had Judge Pitcher on the show to discuss the great school that Southern Law School is.
And he's been a wonderful mentor. Yeah.
Judge, let's talk about also the fact that you ran for the highest position in this state on the judiciary. You won out of 8 candidates. You placed first in the primary and then got almost 48% of the vote, 48% of the vote. Very impressive.
Well, and I encourage young people all the time that you need to dare great things, that you should believe in yourself, and to the extent that you are prepared for a position, you should not let anything hinder you from at least making the attempt. And there is no failure in trying. Right. And so
there is no failure.
Yeah.
What I find so wonderful is that you and I were talking, in your beginning, you grew up in Baton Rouge, born and raised here, like I was, brought up in a split family, like I was too, but you took advantage of some programs that got you on this trajectory of success in a productive, successful life. Tell the folks about that.
Well, one of the things I tell young people, it doesn't matter where you come from, it does not matter the circumstances of your birth, that through hard work, through prayer, through applying yourselves, through education, you can be anything you want to be in life. And so one of the things I've tried to do over the last 33 years is to go back to churches, to go back to schools. Now, particularly as a judge, I see the benefit in trying to reach young people at the very early stages of their lives, try to give them a good example, give them a good role model, encourage them to get their education. The more of them I see there at the church house and the schoolhouse, the less I'll have to see at the courthouse.
Let's continue this on the next segment, Judge.
Okay.
This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines. Judge John Michael Guidry will be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, Sean Fagan, and Corey Ogeron, and our entire staff for letting us come into your homes for the last 10 years via Legal Lines. We hope that you've come to a greater understanding of how the law works and how the government works for you. So from all of us, thank you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have on the show today Judge John Michael Guidry. He's a judge on the First Circuit Court of Appeal. Judge, again, thank you so much.
Good to be here.
Let's dive back in kind of where we finished off, because you've just basically gone through an illustrative career, and you're not even halfway through. But you've poured in to your community, and particularly the youth, for I think you said 33 years. And your journey began with a program called Head Start.
Correct.
Tell the folks what that is.
Head Start is one of the great programs of our country that pours into the lives of young people at a very early age. It allows them an opportunity to get the fundamentals. We have to reach children at the very youngest ages, and what you'll find is that if we don't reach them there, when we start getting in the second grade and third grade and we start taking these standardized tests, then the Department of Corrections determines how many prison beds that they will build based on those test scores we're taking at second and third grade. So therefore we have to start
Judge, is
that's exactly the case.
That's terrifying.
That's terrifying. And so what we have to do is, before they start taking those standardized tests at second and third grade, we have to have the pre-K, we have to have the Head Start, the early education. And Head Start is one of those programs. And what it does is does not only address the child in the classroom, but it takes a holistic approach and attempts to address the needs of the entire family.
Judge, I found this fascinating because you enlightened me to something that I never thought about. And that is that they don't need just a foundation for education. They need a foundation just to be ready to receive that education.
Well, the educational process can't take place when a child comes to school hungry. It can't take place if the child is coming to school with emotional issues that are going on in the family. And so you have to give parenting skills to parents. You have to provide for the social needs of that household, to make sure there's decent housing, to make sure that there's decent clothing, that the child has nutrition, not only at the Head Start Center, but also at home. And so the approach is to bring the entire family into the scenario and to address those needs. And then the child comes to school ready to learn, able to learn. And again, you start teaching that child the ABCs, you teach them to read early, and then they're ready to take those standardized tests, and then that becomes a predicting factor, not of prison cells, but of how many more colleges that you need to build. And it's a very clear economic choice.
Gosh almighty.
Yeah, you could spend $9,000 to incarcerate these young people, or you can spend $9,000 to educate them, or you can spend $24,000 to incarcerate them as adults, or $44,000 to incarcerate them as youth. Those figures we talked about a little bit earlier. So it makes good economic sense. Not only is it morally compelling, but of course it's economically and politically the proper thing to do is not to squander our most precious resource, which are our children. And so we have to put the resources into educating these young people, and we need to start doing it at very early ages. And therefore we can cut the crime rate, we can raise the productivity of the nation, because we then give these individuals the education and the training that they need to be productive citizens.
Judge. I mean, we're going to pay one way or the other.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And either we pay, like you were indicating, roughly $9,000 to educate a child from this study that the governor had done. And we'll go through that a little later, but $9,000 per child to educate them from kindergarten through 12th grade, or those $27,000 and $44,000 if they're in the penal system.
Correct.
So we either pay $9,000 or we pay that, and those numbers were annually. That $44,000 or $47,000 is per year per person. So it's not a question of whether you're going to pay anything or not. You are. If it, for these folks who don't feel like they should have to do that, well, then just think about it in terms of economics.
Right. It's pure economics, and clearly it's the morally correct thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And if that doesn't grab you, then of course, then if you look at the economics, then you realize that we have to invest in the education of our young children rather than set them up for a life of incarceration. We are failing our young children. The young children don't ask to come into these situations, and we as an entire community, as the old African saying that you have to have a whole village to raise the community, and it's in the village's best interest because ultimately these are the persons who will be caring for us
That's right.
In our old age.
Either they're going to be productive and provide.
Correct, and they'll either be able to be our doctors and our nurses and our lawyers. They'll be the ones who are marrying our children. They'll be the ones that are providing for the society in which we live as we move forward. And so we want to make sure that they are productive. We want to make sure that they're educated. We want to make sure that America continues to be great because we have an educated populace.
Judge, I'm thoroughly disturbed at what you just indicated, and that is by second grade or when they're doing these standardized tests, if the kids aren't prepared, basically what the federal government is saying, there's a large percentage of these children who are going to be in prisons. We know it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And certainly, you know, rather than accepting that, then we need to be proactive and we need to put the resources there to make sure that that's not what happens. We know what will happen if we don't do it, and so we should, you know, do the right thing, and that is to make sure these children are educated, and we need to make sure that we address the problem holistically. It doesn't make sense to feed the child at home and then the child goes hungry at night and they come to school not prepared to learn. It doesn't make sense to just deal with the child's environment at the school and then the child goes into a different environment every night and over the weekend. We have to make sure that the child is getting the same positive messages, that the child is getting the same nutrition, the same resources, so that the child is able to learn, and that's in the best interest of our society generally.
Judge, I actually was talking with our law enforcement officials, and what's so difficult is that as much as we all want to help through the government and programs, federal, state, local, that the government can't be the family, the single unit that is providing the family type of guidance or direction or discipline and all that we know is so important. And that's why you've gone out for the last 33 years and talked to these kids directly and to parents and Head Start's also dealing with the parental situation. Explain to the folks how that works, what you've done.
When I was a freshman student at Louisiana State University in the Middleton Library in the listening room, I heard a speech by Dr. Martin Luther King, and he said, if you really want to be great, then you have to serve. He took that from the 10th chapter of the Gospel by St. Mark. And so as I was getting my education there at LSU and as I was getting my education at the Southern University Law Center, it was very clear to me that the only way that I could really make a contribution is to serve, to give back. And so I have spent my time, in the words of the song, giving myself away to the community, to these young people, because ultimately that's all we leave behind. And so I believe that if children can see it, that they can be it. If I can go into a school setting and they could see me as a judge and I can tell them my life story growing up in South Baton Rouge, what we commonly refer to as the bottom, letting them know that for most of my life.
It's not funny. I'm laughing, but I remember having a paint company. I had a lot of guys work for me from there, and they were good guys.
Yeah, and letting them know that, you know, though I was raised most of my life by a single mother, letting them know all of these difficulties didn't stop me from being a judge. And so that's what they have to see. You're
giving them a target. All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines and First Circuit Court of Appeal Judge John Michael Guidry. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, Sean Fagan, and Corey Ogeron, and our entire staff for letting us come into your homes for the last 10 years via Legal Lines. We hope that you've come to a greater understanding of how the law works and how the government works for you. So from all of us, thank you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have on the show today First Circuit Court of Appeal Judge John Michael Guidry. Judge, let's dive right back in, and thanks so much. You know, we were discussing some stats in this report that the governor authorized, the lieutenant governor, and the state legislature in March of 2010, and it was performed by the Louisiana Council on the Social Status of Black Boys and Men. And listen to this. It's confirming everything you said. It's a summary. It's key report highlights. It says, education is the strongest and most predictive determinant of health, socioeconomic, and criminal outcomes. Just a 1-year increase in the average level of schooling in a community is associated with a 30% decrease in overall murder rates. Amazing.
Mm-hmm. And I tell young people all the time that I am a judge on the First Circuit Court of Appeal, first of all because God's grace and mercy, and then because of education. That is a key to success. I mean, along with that goes making good choices along the way, because you can have all the education you want and you can make some bad choices and still not be productive in life. So I tell them, have the right attitude, get your education, stay away from those things that will hinder your success, and you can be anything you want to be in life. I give them my own life's example. I talk about figures like President Obama. I talk about figures like John Kennedy. I talk about the fact that it doesn't matter where you come from, the circumstances of your birth, rich or poor, black or white, you can be anything you want to be in life, but you got to get that education. And everybody's not going to be a doctor, everybody's not going to be a lawyer, everybody's not going to be a judge, but you can go to trade school, you can get any type of skill training. I know some persons who are beauticians and barbers and mechanics who make a great living, have raised children, have been productive members of our society, and some of them make more money than lawyers.
That's right.
And so ultimately, what I just tell them, that whatever you do, as long as you give a good, honest day's work for honest day's pays, it's much better to have a minimum wage job where you go to work every day than to make 2 cents an hour to Angola.
And let's say that again.
Yeah, and so we encourage them to get that education and be productive. And so education is an out. Education is an opportunity to be whatever you want to be. But again, that's why I like to go and say that, because if they can see it, they can be it. If I can tell them my life story and show them how education has me as a judge on the First Circuit Court of Appeal, then they can relate to that.
They got a target.
Right, they have a target.
He did it, I can do it.
Exactly.
Let's talk about Upward Bound, because as I understand it, Head Start focuses on elementary, pre-elementary kids and their families. Tell folks what Upward Bound is.
Upward Bound is another federal program, another Great Society program like Head Start. It's geared toward college campuses where they go into the community, get children who in the most instance are disadvantaged children, give them an opportunity during the school year to come on Saturdays and get enrichment courses in things like English and math and other skills so that they are better performing in schools. During the summer, they actually bring them on the college campus, let them live in dorms, let them go
have that experience.
And so again, if you can see it, you can be it. If I can bring you on the college campus and show you these other young people that come from, in many instances where you come from, then you realize I can be a college student as well. And so
that's
the exposure,
so important, Judge.
the exposure.
Art and Gail Moore were in here several months ago, and Gail brings young ladies into this nice hotels in Baton Rouge for a get-together once every year. And she said 99% of those girls had never been in a nice hotel in their life. They live in a certain area, certain time, and that's all their experiences.
Well, you have to broaden horizons. As a young child, I read a lot of books, and one of the books allowed me to see different things. And so again, through reading, children can get outside of their environment through exposures, through programs like Upward Bound. They can go to a Saints game, they can go to a nice hotel, they can go to a college campus. But again, giving young people exposure to things that education can lead to, encourages them to make good choices to get their education. And so the more exposure, the more opportunities that you provide for young people.
Gives them hope.
It gives them hope. Exactly.
And a model. It's wonderful. Tell me about your involvement with the churches and how you're seeing the churches being used as a tool, and obviously by God, but also by folks to pull themselves out of that.
Well, I'm most appreciative of the clergy of our city who not only preach on Sunday, but they go out and minister into the community. They pour out themselves to our young people, in particular these youth ministries, the opportunity for those children to give their first speech, the opportunity for those children to come in and show their God-given gifts and talents, to provide them with educational opportunities, job opportunities, to provide them with social skills, but most of all, giving them a foundation of faith, letting them know that through Christ all things are possible, but having the social gospel aspect of it, so that you are trying to reach the entire child. It's kind of hard to tell a child about Jesus unless you also
gotta live it, don't you?
You have to live it, and that's what I'm proud of the clergy of our city for doing. They are being what Jesus said, suffering little children to come unto them, and they're devoting their time and the resources of their congregations to these young people. But they're not only giving them the word of life, but they're giving them some physical bread, and they're giving them some job opportunities, some education, and some training, and they're trying to address the whole child. And that social gospel, I think, is important to the community.
Let's talk about also the way that you've seen certain programs identify the leaders or the children who have obvious leadership potential, because they recognize in those children, leader children, can bring others down either the wrong side of the trail or the right side.
I recently spoke to a graduation of Young Leaders Academy. Tanya Robinson, a good friend of mine, runs that. And what they do is they identify these young people who are leaders, and they try to channel those leadership skills in positive ways, recognizing that if they can get these children into education, get them into dispute resolution, get them involved in positive things, and they will go back on the playground, go back at the schoolhouse, and they will be positive leaders for their peers. That type of peer leadership. So programs like the Young Leaders Academy certainly try to identify leadership skills in young people who we know may do a better job of reaching each other than some older people would.
Well, and in fact, you and I were discussing that, look, we can't at our age expect to necessarily reach children with the same kind of mindset and tool and experiences that we have, because that's not what they respond to, because that's not their experience.
Right, and so sometimes instead of telling them you need to go to the library, you have to say something like, you need to put your face in a book and get off Facebook. And when they hear the words Facebook, then that is more relevant to them. And so again, we have to reach the children where they are, and we have to encourage them to, again, spend time doing positive things. This summer, instead of just being on Facebook, they need to put their face in a book so they'll be ready for the new school year.
As a judge, you've seen those who used to be children going down the wrong side, and you're seeing the end product, crime, and you've talked about alternative dispute resolution. Why don't you hit that real fast, because we have the highest percentage of our population in jail in the world.
I know that to the extent that you can reach these children at the schoolhouse, at the church house, they won't be at the courthouse unless they're coming as lawyers or judges. And so I recognize that as a community, no matter what our public service role is, we have to go back and reach these children where they are. They're our children, they're our sons and daughters, and we have to pour into their lives.
Judge, thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
It's been wonderful to have you on the show.
Okay.
This is Locke Meredith Legal Lines, First Circuit Court of Appeal Judge John Michael Guidry. Thank you for being with us today.